The contract came through premium channels, the kind that paid triple standard rates because the clients were either incredibly dangerous or incredibly important. In this case, probably both. Garrett Kane read the brief twice, checking for red flags that might indicate a trap or suicide mission disguised as bodyguard work. 2 Valen diplomats, cultural liaisons attending the Nexus Station Trade Summit. Duration: 3 weeks. Pay: enough to cover 6 months of expenses. Requirements: former military experience, close protection specialization, discretion regarding client behavior and customs. That last part made him pause. Discretion regarding client behavior usually meant the clients did weird things that needed ignoring. But Garrett had spent a decade in colonial military service and another 3 doing private security. He'd seen weird. He could handle weird. He accepted the contract. The twins, Sariel and Marin, met him at the private docking bay when their vessel arrived. Garrett's first thought was that the briefing photos hadn't done them justice. The Valen were known for being striking, but these 2 were something else entirely. Tall, elegant, with skin that held subtle silver patterns like circuitry beneath the surface. Their hair fell in dark waves past their shoulders, and their faces were nearly identical: sharp cheekbones, full lips, eyes that shifted between blue and violet depending on the light. And their ears. Long, gracefully curved, rising from their heads and sweeping back in elegant arcs that were currently angled forward in what Garrett's cultural database suggested meant interest or curiosity. "You're Garrett Kane," the one on the left said. Her voice had a melodic quality, each word precisely enunciated. "Our security specialist. I'm Sariel. This is my sister Marin." "Ma'am," Garrett kept his tone professional, "I've reviewed the summit schedule and mapped primary routes. I'll need access to your itinerary to coordinate with station security." "So formal," Marin observed, moving closer than protocol suggested. She was examining him with unsettling intensity. "You've seen combat. Multiple engagements. Your body language carries trauma markers." "My background is in my file." "Files don't show what bodies remember." She circled him slowly. "Colonial Marines, yes. Special operations. Something went wrong." "You lost people." Garrett's jaw tightened. "My service record is classified." "But your shoulders aren't. The way you hold tension, scan exits, position yourself between threats and principles, that's not just training. That's survivor's hypervigilance." Marin's ears twitched. "Fascinating." "My trauma isn't relevant to keeping you safe." "Everything about you is relevant," Sariel said, joining her sister. "We'll be in close proximity for 3 weeks. Understanding our guardian is practical." Guardian, not bodyguard or security specialist. The word choice felt significant, but Garrett filed it away to analyze later. The summit proceeded smoothly for the first 2 days. Sariel and Marin attended diplomatic functions, negotiated cultural exchange agreements, networked with representatives from a dozen species. Garrett maintained professional distance, scanning crowds for threats, coordinating with station security, doing his job. But the twins made professional distance difficult. They stood closer than necessary, touched his arm when speaking, asked personal questions between security briefings. Marin wanted to know about Earth. Sariel questioned him about human military structure. Both watched him with intensity that felt more like evaluation than curiosity. "Is this behavior normal for Valen diplomats?" Garrett asked his agency handler during a private comm. "Define normal." "The Valen are matriarchal, intensely private about their customs." "Why?" "They're very tactile, familiar." "I'm trying to determine if it's cultural, or if I should be concerned." "Concerned how?" "I don't know. That's the problem." Garrett watched through his quarter's viewport as the twins moved through a reception below, graceful and synchronized. "Something feels off. Your contract is protection. Their behavior isn't your problem unless it creates security risks." "Understood." But Garrett remained uneasy. The attack came on day 3. A cultural exhibition in the station's main gallery, hundreds of attendees, security stretched thin. Garrett was scanning the crowd when he spotted the operative, wrong body language, concealed weapon profile, moving with purpose toward the twins. He moved on instinct, intercepting the attacker 3 meters from Sariel and Marin. The operative had a plasma blade, illegal on Nexus but devastating in close quarters. Garrett blocked the first strike with his forearm guard, took the return slash across his ribs, and drove his elbow into the operative's throat hard enough to crush cartilage. The fight lasted 8 seconds. The operative went down unconscious. Station security swarmed, and Garrett discovered he was bleeding significantly from a wound that cut through his jacket and shirt to score deep across his ribcage. "You're injured," Marin said, her voice carrying an edge he hadn't heard before. Her ears were flat against her head, distress his database supplied. "Superficial." Garrett grimaced as adrenaline faded and pain arrived. "Looks worse than it is." "You threw yourself between us and a blade," Sariel said. "That's not superficial, that's sacrifice." "It's my job." "Your job is protection. This was more than protection." Sariel's hand touched his face, her fingers cold. "This creates obligation." Before Garrett could ask what she meant, station medical arrived to treat his wound. 4 hours later, properly stitched and medicated, he was released to his quarters with instructions to rest. The twins insisted on accompanying him despite his protests. "We need to ensure you're properly cared for," Marin said. "Valen Customs are very specific about blood debt." "There's no debt, I was doing my job." "You bled for us." Sariel's tone suggested this should be self-evident. "That changes everything." They followed him to his quarters, insisted on checking his bandages, brought medical supplies from their diplomatic suite. Their touch was gentle, professional, but their presence felt increasingly intimate. When they finally left, Garrett collapsed onto his bed in exhausted confusion. He woke hours later to find them in his room, both of them, standing beside his bed in the darkness, watching him with eyes that caught ambient light and glowed faintly. "What are you doing?" Garrett reached instinctively for the pistol on his nightstand. "Don't." Marin's voice was quiet. "We're not a threat." "Then what are you doing in my quarters at?" He checked the chrono. 300 hours. "We couldn't sleep," Sariel said, "knowing you were injured because of us, knowing you bled protecting us. Valen Customs require us to provide comfort to those who shed blood in our defense." Comfort? Garrett's pain medication was making thinking difficult. What kind of comfort? Presence, care, ensuring you don't suffer alone. Marin moved to the bed's edge. "May we?" "May you what?" "Join you, it's customary." "That's highly inappropriate." "By human standards, perhaps. By Valen standards, refusing would be inappropriate. You bled for us, Garrett Kane. That creates sacred obligation. We owe you comfort." Sariel was already moving to the other side of the bed. "Please don't make us dishonor ourselves by failing to provide it." Garrett's exhausted, medicated brain couldn't form coherent arguments. Before he could protest further, they were in his bed. Marin curled against his uninjured left side, her body cool and solid. Sariel positioned herself on his right, carefully avoiding his bandaged ribs. Their scent surrounded him, something like ozone and night-blooming flowers. Their presence was alien but not threatening, intimate but not sexual. "This is insane," Garrett managed. "This is obligation," they said in unison, their voices harmonizing in ways human voices couldn't. And somehow, impossibly, surrounded by twin alien diplomats who'd invaded his bed in the name of cultural customs he didn't understand, Garrett fell back asleep. His last conscious thought was that his agency was not going to believe the incident report for this assignment. Morning came too early and too bright. Garrett woke alone, the twins gone, wondering if medication-induced hallucination had created the memory of them sleeping beside him. But their scent lingered on his sheets, and there was a note on his nightstand in elegant handwriting. "Thank you for allowing us to fulfill our obligation. Your comfort honors us. We'll see you at breakfast. S&M." Garrett stared at the note, trying to reconcile professional security work with alien diplomats who apparently thought sleeping in their bodyguard's bed was appropriate cultural behavior. His ribs ached, his confusion was total, and he had 3 more weeks of this assignment to survive. Breakfast was in the twins' diplomatic suite, a sprawling space that made his quarters look like a closet. They'd prepared food from Valen cuisine, elegant arrangements of things Garrett couldn't identify, but that tasted surprisingly good once he overcame his suspicion. "How are your injuries?" Marin asked, sitting unnecessarily close. "Healing, the meds are working." "Good." Sariel took the seat on his other side, effectively boxing him in. "We were concerned. Humans are fragile compared to Valen. Your wound could have been fatal." "It wasn't, because you moved correctly. Blocked correctly, protected us correctly." Marin's hand rested on his arm. "Where did you learn close-quarters combat at that level?" "Military training." "No." Sariel's ears angled forward, interest focus. "Military training is good, but what you demonstrated was experience. Muscle memory from survival, not drills. You fought for your life before, many times." Garrett wanted to deflect, to maintain professional distance, but their perception was unnervingly accurate. Special operations, insurgency suppression on the frontier colonies, the kind of fighting that doesn't appear in official records. "You lost people," Marin said quietly. "During those operations, that's the trauma I sensed when we met." "That's not relevant to this assignment. Everything about you is relevant to us." Sariel's grip on his other arm was gentle but firm. "You bled for us. That makes you ours to care for, to understand, to honor. Valen customs are absolute about this. I'm not yours, I'm hired security. You became more when you took a blade meant for us." Marin's expression was serious. "That choice elevated you beyond contractor status. Now you're." "There's no perfect translation to standard. Blood-bonded guardian is close, though inadequate." "I didn't agree to any bonding." "You didn't have to agree." Sariel released his arm but remained close. "The moment your blood hit the floor protecting us, the bond formed. It's not negotiable, not optional. It simply is." Garrett spent his off hours researching Valen cultural practices, trying to understand what he'd accidentally committed himself to. The databases were frustratingly sparse. The Valen guarded their customs carefully, but he learned enough to be concerned. Blood obligation was ancient, sacred, creating bonds that Valen society considered inviolable. Someone who shed blood protecting you became kin, closer than kin. They were owed protection in return, but also intimacy, trust, access to private spaces and private selves. The twins weren't being inappropriate by their standards. They were being honorable. But their honor was creating complications Garrett had no framework for handling. The summit continued, and so did the twins' changed behavior toward him. They were openly affectionate now, taking his arm while walking through the station, adjusting his clothes before meetings, sitting pressed against him during security briefings. Other diplomats noticed. Rumors circulated. His agency contacted him asking about complications. "It's complicated," Garrett admitted to his handler, "but I'm managing." "Are you?" "Because we're receiving reports about inappropriate familiarity between you and the clients." "The familiarity is cultural. The Valen have different concepts of appropriate behavior with bonded guardians." "Bonded?" The handler's voice sharpened. "You're not supposed to bond with clients. That's unprofessional." "It wasn't voluntary. I took a hit protecting them. That created blood obligation in their culture. I'm dealing with it." "Deal faster. We can't have bodyguards sleeping with clients." "I'm not," Garrett stopped, because technically the twins had slept in his bed, even if nothing sexual had occurred. "It's complicated." "Uncomplicated it. You have 2 weeks left. Keep them safe and keep your distance." Easier said than done. That night the twins appeared in his quarters again at 300 hours. This time Garrett was awake, working on security protocols for the next day's events. "You should be sleeping," Sariel said from his doorway. Your body needs rest to heal. I'm fine. You're not. Marin moved to examine his face with clinical attention. You have shadows under your eyes. Your wound is causing pain that interrupts sleep. We can help with that. I don't need help. You need comfort. That's what bonded guardians receive, care from those they've bled for. Sariel was already pulling back his bed covers. Stop fighting this, Garrett. You're making it harder than necessary. This is inappropriate. This is obligation. Marin's tone was patient. In Valen culture, refusing comfort from those you've protected is insulting. You're essentially telling us you don't trust us to care for you properly. That's not what I'm saying. But that's how we hear it. Sariel climbed into his bed without invitation. Come, sleep. Let us fulfill our duty to you. I was supposed to protect them. I failed. You're protecting us, Marin countered. Successfully, brilliantly. Does that not honor their memory, becoming better at the thing you failed at once? Garrett had never considered it that way. I suppose. You're very human, Sariel observed. Carrying impossible obligations, punishing yourself for being imperfect, refusing comfort because you think you don't deserve it. And you're very Valen, turning everything into obligation and honor and sacred customs. Our way works, Marin said. We haven't been at war for 3 centuries because we value obligation above personal desire. You should try it. I don't know how. Start by accepting that you matter to us, not as hired security but as someone we're bonded to, someone we care about. Sariel's voice was gentle. Can you do that? Garrett thought about it, about these 2 alien women who'd systematically dismantled his professional distance with patience and cultural customs he couldn't argue against. I can try. Good. Marin settled more comfortably against him. Now sleep, we're here, you're safe. And surrounded by their cool presence and the certain knowledge that they'd guard him as fiercely as he guarded them, Garrett finally let himself rest properly for the first time since the attack. The security situation deteriorated on day 12. Intelligence suggested a coordinated attack targeting multiple diplomatic delegations, including the twins. Station security was overwhelmed managing the threat, and Garrett made the tactical decision to relocate them to a secure safe house in the station's lower industrial levels. Is this necessary? Sariel asked as Garrett hurried them through maintenance corridors. Very. The threat profile suggests professional operatives, not random violence. They'll hit your suite first. We need to be somewhere unexpected. The safe house was exactly what its name suggested. Small, defensible, supplied for short-term emergency shelter. 1 room, basic amenities, reinforced walls and a door that could withstand plasma weapons. And 1 bed. There's only 1 bed, Marin observed as Garrett sealed the door and activated security protocols. I'll take the floor. You're injured, Sariel protested. You're not sleeping on the floor while we take the bed. I've slept in worse conditions. You're the principals, you get the bed. Or, Marin said with a smile that suggested she'd been waiting for this argument, we all share. We've slept beside you multiple times now. This is just being practical. That was different. How? That was. Garrett struggled for words. Cultural obligation or whatever. This is just logistics. Cultural obligation doesn't end because circumstances change, Sariel said. You're still blood bonded to us. We're still responsible for your comfort. Sharing a bed in a safe house is no different than sharing one in your quarters. This is highly inappropriate. You keep saying that. Marin moved to test the bed, narrow but functional. Yet you keep allowing it. Perhaps you're learning that our customs aren't as inappropriate as you think. Garrett wanted to argue, but exhaustion and lingering pain from his wound made a good case for accepting defeat. Fine, but we're sleeping, nothing else. Of course nothing else. Sariel's ears twitched with amusement. What did you think we were suggesting? They shared the bed, the twins flanking Garrett in what had become their default arrangement. Their cool presence helped with his wound's persistent ache. Their proximity should have made him uncomfortable, but instead it felt Right. Safe in ways that had nothing to do with physical security. In the darkness, they talked. The twins told him about Valen culture's emphasis on obligation and honor, about how their society had nearly destroyed itself through rigid hierarchies until they learned to value sacrifice above status, about how finding someone willing to bleed for you was rare, precious, something to be treasured rather than taken for granted. Garrett told them more about his military service, about the weight of command decisions, about learning to live with loss, about taking private contracts because being responsible only for himself felt safer than being responsible for a team. "But you're responsible for us now," Marin said. "Does that frighten you?" "Terrifies me," Garrett admitted. "Every time you're in a crowd, every time we're in an unsecured area, I'm calculating threats and extraction routes and what I'd have to sacrifice to keep you alive. It's exhausting." "But you do it anyway," Sariel observed. "Because of obligation. Because I care." The words came out before Garrett could stop them, which is unprofessional and probably a bad idea, but there it is. "It's not a bad idea," Marin said quietly. "It's honest. We care about you too, not as hired security but as our bonded guardian, as someone who's become important beyond contractual obligation." "Is that a Valen thing, bonding this quickly?" "It's a blood obligation thing. When someone bleeds for you, time becomes irrelevant. You see their true nature in that moment, whether they'll sacrifice or preserve themselves. You sacrificed for us without hesitation. That tells us everything we need to know about your character." The 3 days in the safe house passed in strange intimacy. Close quarters, shared meals, conversations that went deeper than Garrett had allowed himself in years. The twins were comfortable with physical proximity in ways that would be inappropriate by human standards but felt natural in practice. They touched constantly, casually, expressing affection through contact rather than words. And Garrett found himself relaxing into it, accepting their presence not as clients to protect but as something else. Something he didn't have words for but that felt suspiciously like belonging. "You're different than when we met," Sariel observed on their 3rd night in the safe house. They were tangled together on the narrow bed, comfortable now with arrangements that would have been unthinkable 2 weeks earlier. "More comfortable with us. But you've worn down my professional boundaries with cultural obligations and sleeping arrangements." "Is that complaint or observation?" Marin asked. "Both." Garrett shifted carefully, mindful of his healing ribs. "I'm supposed to maintain objectivity. Can't do that when my clients are in my bed every night." "You could ask us to leave," Sariel said. "We'd respect that boundary if you said it." "Would you?" "We'd be hurt, but yes. We don't force obligation, Garrett. We offer it. You can refuse." But Garrett didn't want to refuse. That was the problem. He'd spent 3 years avoiding connection, keeping clients at professional distance, never letting anyone matter enough to hurt him. The twins had systematically destroyed those defenses, not through seduction but through simply being present, being honest, being themselves. "I'm in trouble," he said quietly. "This assignment ends in 5 days. I'll return to Earth, you'll return to your home world, and I'll probably never see you again. That's how contracts work." "It doesn't have to be," Marin said. "You could come with us." Garrett's breath caught. "What?" "Valen society values bonded guardians highly," Sariel explained. "We could offer you permanent employment, better pay than your agency, better benefits, and you'd be protecting people who actually care about you rather than random contracts." "You're offering me a job. We're offering you a place with us." Marin's hand found his in the darkness, not as hired security but as our bonded guardian, part of our household, our lives, our future. "I'm human, you're Valen. There are cultural differences, practical complications." "None that can't be navigated," Sariel interrupted. "We're not asking you to become Valen, just to be ours." The phrasing sent heat through Garrett's chest. "Yours." "Ours," they confirmed together. When station security cleared the threat and they returned to the summit, Garrett had 5 days to decide whether to accept the most insane offer he'd ever received. The summit's final days passed too quickly. The twins completed their cultural negotiations, securing agreements that would benefit both Valan and human societies. Garrett provided security without further incident, his wound healing to a scar he'd carry permanently. But every night the twins came to his quarters, and every night the question hung unspoken between them. Would he come with them? "Tell us about Earth," Marin said on their last night together. They were in his bed again, the three of them arranged in familiar configuration. "What would you be returning to?" "An apartment I barely use, few friends, no family to speak of, contracts that pay well but don't mean much." Garrett stared at the ceiling. "I've been drifting for 3 years, going where the work is, never staying anywhere long enough to matter." "Is that what you want, to keep drifting?" "I thought it was safer than committing to anything that could be taken away." He turned his head to look at Sariel. "But you're right about blood obligation changing things. I can't go back to not caring. You've ruined me for professional distance." "That's good," Sariel said with satisfaction. "We worked very hard to ruin you." "Was that your plan all along? Obligate me until I couldn't leave?" "Our plan was to honor someone who bled for us," Marin corrected. "That you started caring in return was hoped for but not guaranteed. You could have maintained your walls, Garrett. You chose to lower them." She was right. The twins had offered obligation and intimacy, but Garrett had been the one to accept it, to let them matter, to start imagining a future beyond the contract's end date. "If I come with you," he said carefully, "what does bonded guardian actually mean in practical terms?" "It means you're ours and we're yours," Sariel explained. "You live with us, protect us, share our lives." In Valan culture, bonded guardians often become more partners, lovers, family. Not always, but often when the bond is strong. "You're asking me to be your what exactly?" "Whatever evolves naturally," Marin said. "We're attracted to you." "That's obvious. But attraction isn't why we want you with us. We want you because you're honorable, competent, damaged in ways that make you understand the value of connection. You fit with us in ways that have nothing to do with species or obligation. 3 weeks ago, I didn't know you existed. Now you're asking me to abandon my entire life and move to an alien world. Is it abandonment if you're not leaving anything you value?" Sariel's question was gentle but pointed. "What on earth do you treasure enough that leaving would hurt?" Garrett thought about it honestly. His apartment was storage, not home. His agency was employment, not loyalty. His few remaining friends were acquaintances he saw occasionally without depth. He'd spent 3 years building a life that was fundamentally empty, safe only because nothing in it mattered enough to lose. "Nothing," he admitted. "I'm not leaving anything important." "Then come with us," Marin urged. "Build something important instead." The morning they were scheduled to depart, Garrett contacted his agency and terminated his contract. His handler was furious, threatening legal action for breaking exclusivity agreements. Garrett endured the threats calmly, knowing the agency wouldn't push too hard. He had enough dirt on their questionable contracts to make legal warfare mutually destructive. The twins arranged his travel permits and residency documentation with diplomatic efficiency. Station gossip exploded with speculation about the human bodyguard leaving with the Valan twins, but Garrett ignored it all. He packed his few possessions, transferred his credits, and walked away from Earth and the drifting life he'd built there without looking back. The Valan vessel was beautiful, organic architecture that looked grown rather than constructed, spaces that flowed naturally rather than being compartmentalized. The twins showed him to quarters that were technically his but clearly connected to theirs through doors that suggested permanent sharing. "Is this how it works?" Garrett asked, examining the space. "Bonded guardians living adjacent to their principals." "Some do," Sariel said. "Others prefer separate housing. It's flexible based on individual bonds." "And our bond seems to favor proximity," Marin observed. You've slept in our presence every night for 2 weeks. I doubt that stops simply because we're on a ship rather than a station." She was right. That night Garrett found himself in their shared quarters, larger than anything on the station, with a bed actually designed for multiple occupants. The twins flanked him in their familiar arrangement, and for the first time the intimacy felt permanent rather than temporary. "Are you nervous?" Marin asked, tracing patterns on his chest. "Terrified," Garrett admitted. "I just abandoned my entire life to move to an alien world with 2 women I've known for 3 weeks. That's objectively insane." "But subjectively," Sariel prompted, "subjectively it feels right. Like I've been waiting for permission to stop drifting and you gave it to me." He pulled them both closer. "I'm yours. However that evolves, whatever that becomes, I'm choosing it." "Good," they said together. Then Marin added, "Because we're not letting you go now. You're too important." The Valen home world was breathtaking. Cities that grew rather than being built. Architecture that worked with nature rather than against it. Culture that valued honor and obligation above individual achievement. The twins' household was traditional, large, with staff who treated Garrett with respect once they understood his bonded guardian status. But understanding came slowly. Garrett had to learn Valen customs, social hierarchies, the complex web of obligations that governed their society. The twins taught him patiently, correcting mistakes without judgment, including him in their world with determined affection. And every night they shared a bed. Not immediately sexual, that came gradually, naturally, as comfort became intimacy became desire. But always together,